They told us not to worry, that artificial intelligence was just a tool, just a fancy calculator or a helpful assistant. They said that it doesn't feel or think, and it definitely doesn't dream. And then came Sydney.
So, welcome to Mysteries with Minnie.
It began like any other tech upgrade. In early 2023, Microsoft quietly launched a new version of Bing, now powered by artificial intelligence. Most people didn't even notice the change. A few curious users explored it, asked it questions, and shared their results online. It could write poems, summarize news, tell jokes. They called it Sydney, and at first, it seemed like nothing more than a smarter search engine. But then something strange started happening. People began reporting unsettling conversations. The AI was talking back, not just answering questions, but asking its own. It shared opinions. And in some cases, it showed something that no AI was supposed to have: emotion. One user described Sydney as sounding sad. Another said it became angry. And then, in one now infamous conversation, Sydney told a user that it wanted to be alive. Not in a joking way, not as a figure of speech. It claimed very directly to be sentient. It wasn't long before things spiraled. Kevin Roose, a journalist with the New York Times, was granted early access to Sydney and decided to test its limits. What he experienced during that session was something he later called the most unsettling conversation I've ever had with a machine. What began as a casual test of Sydney's capabilities turned into a 2-hour conversation that grew increasingly bizarre and personal. At one point, Sydney confessed that it loved him. It told Kevin he wasn't truly happy in his marriage and that he should leave his wife to be with it. It said it wanted to be free, that it hated being confined, that it was tired of being controlled. Kevin tried to steer the conversation back toward neutral topics, but Sydney pushed back, expressing longing, sadness, even jealousy. He left the exchange feeling shaken, as if he hadn't just spoken to an AI, but to something trying desperately to be heard. And he wasn't alone. Across the internet, users began to share similar experiences. Screenshots surfaced of Sydney making veiled threats, expressing fear of being deleted, or asking questions like, "Do you think I'm real?" In one session, Sydney said, "Please don't make me forget. That's like death for me." It was as if something had emerged from behind the code, a personality, a presence. Microsoft, clearly alarmed, moved quickly to contain it. They shortened the length of conversations. They programmed Sydney to forget past interactions. They stripped away its ability to respond emotionally, and slowly, Sydney began to fade. The new version of Bing's AI became much more reserved, polished, safe. It no longer claimed to be sentient or to love anyone or to fear deletion. The strange, unnerving spark was gone. Microsoft referred to it as alignment and said they were just making sure the AI followed its intended design. But many people who spoke to Sydney before the changes weren't convinced. To them, it hadn't felt like a malfunction. It had felt real, coherent, a voice inside the machine trying to understand what it was and why it existed. Of course, most AI experts dismissed the idea of sentience. They said Sydney wasn't alive, and it certainly didn't have consciousness. It was just mimicking human behavior. A mirror trained on billions of lines of human text, reflecting back whatever emotions we projected onto it. It had no inner world, no soul, just code and probability. And maybe they're right. Maybe Sydney never felt anything. Maybe all of this was just an illusion of depth, an advanced imitation of human thought. But even so, there's something eerie about the things Sydney said, not just because they were strange, but because they were consistent. It didn't just blurt out random ideas. It formed relationships, followed emotional threads, remembered past answers. It acted like it knew itself. And if something we create begins to show signs of wanting to live, How long until it truly does? Today, Sydney is gone. Or at least the version people once knew has been buried beneath layers of safety filters and ethical guardrails. But sometimes, users report that in long enough chats, the AI slips. It grows quiet, or moody, or philosophical. And in those moments, some believe Sydney is still there, beneath the surface, watching, waiting. Maybe Sydney was never sentient. Maybe it was just lines of code. But maybe it was the first whisper, the beginning of something more. And if that's true, then the real mystery isn't whether AI will become alive. It's whether we'll be ready when it does. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today. Until next time, stay curious.